Imagine a Tuesday morning. It is 10:14 a.m. You are standing in the network operations center of a major metropolitan hospital network. Or, picture the trading floor of a massive global financial institution.
Right at the absolute peak of the morning rush.
Exactly. Data is flowing, complex decisions are executing at sub-millisecond speeds, real-time remote surgical consults are underway, and, millions of dollars are shifting across international borders, and then in a fraction of a second, the screens freeze.
Oh, wow. The worst case scenario.
Yeah. The voice over IP phones go dead, the secure messaging applications drop offline, the automated trade execution alerts are just silenced. You are entirely, completely off the air.
It is the exact moment every chief information officer has nightmares about. And, the immediate reality is that the silence in that room is deafening.
And here is the critical baseline we have to establish right off the bat. This is not an IT glitch.
No, not at all.
When a hospital or a financial institution inadvertently loses connection, or worse, exposes highly sensitive data because of a massive disconnected messaging failure, it is a catastrophic strategic vulnerability.
Absolutely catastrophic.
You aren't just looking at a few frustrated employees needing a password reset. You are looking at the immediate cessation of business operations. In those minutes of silence, the meter is running on potential millions in regulatory compliance fines.
Right, the meter is definitely running.
And you are bleeding customer trust that you may never earn back. We are talking about the highest possible stakes in corporate data communications.
Well, the perception of network reliability really has to shift. It can't just be a background utility anymore.
Like electricity or plumbing.
Exactly. Executives treat it like plumbing, but it has to be viewed as the absolute front line of enterprise survival. A failure at the routing layer, a dropped SETI trunk, a misconfigured BGP advertisement. When the network fails, the business fails. Full stop.
Which is exactly why you, the listener, need to master the architecture behind these systems. You cannot lead a modern enterprise if you do not understand its central nervous system.
You really can't.
So before we get into the architecture, I want to invite you directly to like, subscribe, and share this deep dive. Do this so you always maintain a competitive edge in the hyper-connected marketplace.
It's vital for staying ahead.
Yeah, and explicitly direct your attention to the description for access to additional corporate resources, diagrams, and technical reading. They map exactly to the frameworks we are analyzing today.
Because, honestly, bridging that gap between abstract networking concepts and high-level corporate decision-making is the only way leaders can properly evaluate their infrastructure investments.
So let's get right into it. Welcome to Episode 2 out of our 15-episode arc. Today is Chapter 2. Solving today's business communication challenges.
A huge topic.
Massive. And just to anchor us strategically, in Chapter 1, the evolution of communication technologies, we mapped the historic shift from analog infrastructures to digital, and finally, to modern IP-based systems.
Right, that was the groundwork.
Yeah, we analyzed how the web, the proliferation of the Internet of Things, and cloud virtualization fundamentally transformed day-to-day business operations.
That really gave us the foundation. We looked at the underlying transport mechanisms of this whole hyper-connected world.
Exactly. And today, our mission is highly targeted. We are taking those foundational technologies from Chapter 1 and unpacking how to use them to solve the exact day-to-day communication hurdles facing modern enterprises, SMBs, and government agencies.
We are translating raw technological theory into executive action.
Because deploying a complex network architecture without a highly specific business purpose is, well, it's just a very expensive way to generate heat in the server room.
That's a great way to put it. Very expensive heat.
So let's start by looking at the core organizational communication challenges, specifically how these hurdles scale and mutate based on organizational size. If you look at standard business school graduate curricula and network management models, it's immediately apparent that a network strategy for a Fortune 500 company would bankrupt a small business.
Oh, overnight.
And a small business strategy would cripple an enterprise.
Yeah, the structural complexity is just entirely different. An enterprise isn't just dealing with a higher headcount. They're dealing with decades of technological accumulation.
Right.
One of the most crushing burdens an enterprise faces is the reality of legacy systems.
This is a massive friction point, isn't it? Executives authorize the purchase of a state-of-the-art, cloud-based unified communications platform.
Yep, the shiny new toy.
Right. And then the engineering team has to figure out how to securely interface that modern API-driven platform with like a mainframe running COBOL that was installed during the Reagan administration.
Exactly. And you can't just rip that mainframe out. Because that legacy system is often housing the core mission-critical data of the entire organization. It's the primary transaction ledger for a bank or, the core reservation system for a global airline.
Wow, okay, so it's untouchable.
Pretty much. Replacing it requires stopping the business, which is completely unacceptable. So network architects have to build these strategic bridges.
Like what?
They are implementing complex API gateways, middleware, translation layers, just to get a modern RESTful API to communicate with a 40-year-old database.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It is incredibly costly, and it introduces latency and security vulnerabilities at literally every translation point.
You're effectively trying to bolt a modern jet engine onto a steam locomotive while the train is still moving.
That is exactly what it feels like.
And alongside that technological debt, enterprises are coordinating across multiple global time zones. You have network traffic traversing international internet service providers, hitting different regulatory firewalls, just to facilitate a real-time data sync between offices in New York, London, and Tokyo. But the heaviest anchor on enterprise agility has to be compliance, right?
Without a doubt, without question. Enterprises operate under the microscope of federal and international law. They have to engineer their networks to maintain secure environments that protect all regulated and unregulated content.
Meaning what, practically speaking?
That means engineering the network so that data is acquired, managed, and archived in strict compliance with frameworks like GDPR in Europe or Sarbanes-Oxley in the US.
Right, the big ones.
Yeah. The network has to automatically enforce encryption, manage access controls, and log every single packet. I mean, a single unsecured database exposed to the public internet can result in penalties that wipe out a quarter's profit.
Wow. Okay, so let's contrast that massive regulated enterprise environment with small, medium-sized businesses.
Yeah.
And specifically, SOHO home office setups.
Okay, totally different world.
Yeah, they don't have mainframes, and they aren't usually targeted by international regulators in the same way, but their vulnerability matrix is uniquely severe, isn't it?
It really is. SOs and SMBs operate with severely limited resources. They don't have a dedicated security operations center monitoring packet traffic 24/7.
Right, they're probably using consumer-grade stuff.
Exactly. They often lack enterprise-grade hardware. And because their customer base is limited, the stakes for every single interaction are magnified exponentially.
So if an enterprise with 20 million customers drops a VoIP call, the statistical impact on their bottom line is just a rounding error.
Basically, yeah.
But for a SOHO, losing a single high-value client because of a disconnected messaging issue or a poor-quality video conference is highly visible. It's deeply damaging.
Very much so.
I often look at wasted time as a fatal metric for these smaller operations. If a solopreneur spends 4 hours trying to troubleshoot a routing issue or a disconnected secure messaging app, that is 4 hours of direct revenue generation permanently lost.
They are highly agile, but incredibly fragile. They really feel the impact of every single technological disruption.
It's the difference between navigating an ocean liner and a speedboat. The enterprise ocean liner is incredibly hard to turn. That's the legacy system burden you mentioned. And it's heavily regulated by maritime law.
I like that analogy.
Thanks. The Canada speedboat, well, it can turn on a dime, but a wave that the ocean liner wouldn't even register could completely capsize the speedboat.
Precisely.
Which brings up a strategic question regarding cybersecurity. I often hear small business owners assume that cyber attackers ignore their speedboats because they want to go after the treasure on the ocean liner.
Oh, man. That assumption is one of the most dangerous misconceptions in modern business today.
Really?
Yes. Cyber attackers frequently target small businesses and SOHOs specifically because enterprises utilize comprehensive layered security solutions.
Because the ocean liner has a private security force, biometric locks, automated threat hunting, and the speedboat often has a consumer-grade router with the default admin password still active.
Exactly. Hackers operate on basic economics. Why spend 6 months trying to penetrate a Fortune 500's zero-trust network architecture when you can just deploy an automated script that scans the internet for thousands of small businesses with unpatched edge routers?
Right. It's a numbers game.
Exactly. The attacker goes for the path of least resistance, encrypts the SO's data with ransomware, and demands a payout. Therefore, engineering a secure environment is not exclusively an enterprise problem. It is a universal, critical necessity across every single tier of business.
Okay, so if everyone from the startup founder to the Fortune 500 CEO is facing these severe communication and security hurdles, we need to look at the architectural solutions, Let's transition into unified communications and how specific industry verticals deploy these systems.
Good pivot.
We really need to define what unified communications, or UC, actually means at an engineering level, because vendors throw that term around as a marketing buzzword for any software that has a basic chat function.
Right, it's become a catch-all term, but it shouldn't be. From an architectural standpoint, unified communications is not just a bundle of standalone desktop applications.
What is it then?
It is a highly integrated central controller, often utilizing SIP or session initiation protocol, that unifies disparate communication methods. High-definition video, chat, fax, instant messaging, email, voice, and SMS.
So it's fundamentally connected.
Yes, it requires deep API-level integration. You aren't just toggling between 6 different siloed systems. The UC platform is acting as a single pane of glass, routing real-time and non-real-time communications seamlessly across the enterprise network.
The return on investment here is striking when you integrate it directly into existing business processes. Our sources highlight that weaving UC into Salesforce automation platforms fundamentally shortens sales cycles and drives revenue.
Think about the friction in a traditional sales workflow.
Okay.
A representative needs to verify supply chain inventory, consult a technical subject matter expert, and secure pricing approval from a regional manager.
Right. And in a fragmented network, that requires an email, leaving a voicemail, and waiting days for responses.
Exactly. When UC is integrated at the API level with the CRM and sales automation tools, the representative can view the real-time presence or network availability of the technical expert.
Oh, so they know if they're at their desk.
Right. They can initiate an encrypted video chat instantly, pull the manager into a secure IM session, authorize the discount, and close the contract in 8 minutes instead of 8 days.
It's weaponizing network speed to remove workflow friction.
That's exactly what it is.
But the technical requirements for UC deployment shift dramatically depending on the vertical, right? Let's examine what we can call the high-stakes twins: banking, finance, and healthcare.
Oh, they definitely share a parallel mandate. In both of these verticals, network communications absolutely must be timely, secure, clear, and highly reliable.
Zero room for error.
Literally zero. The margin for packet loss, latency, or security breaches is functionally zero.
Let's look at healthcare first. The entire IT architecture is built around protecting PHI, protected health information, to satisfy laws like IFPA. But the overarching goal of a hospital's network isn't just to lock data in a digital vault. It's to enhance patient care and eliminate human delays in life-threatening situations.
Right. Consider the network mechanics of a real-time remote video consult.
Okay.
You have a patient in a rural emergency room presenting with a complex neurological trauma. The local team needs to instantly connect with a remote specialist at a central hub.
So the UC solution facilitates a high-definition encrypted video stream.
Yes, but for that to work, the network engineers have to implement strict quality of service, or QoS, tagging.
What does that do?
They have to configure the network routers to prioritize those specific UDP video packets over everything else, like, say, someone in accounting downloading a massive PDF.
Right.
If the video buffers or degrades because of network congestion, the human delay could cost the patient's life.
And the PHI must remain encrypted throughout that entire transmission. When we shift over to banking and finance, they are protecting PII, personally identifiable information.
Yeah, PII is data that uniquely identifies an individual. Social security numbers, biometric data, account routing information. The financial sector relies on UC architectures to deploy secure audio and video conferencing directly at ATMs, or to instantly push multimodal trade alerts to brokers.
Our source material provides a highly technical distinction regarding data security here that every IT leader really has to master. We need to clearly separate the concepts of confidentiality and integrity.
Right. These are 2 pillars of the classic CIA Triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability, but they require entirely different network defenses.
Let's break that down. Confidentiality is the cryptographic assurance that only authorized users can access and view data, right?
Exactly.
So, defending against eavesdropping. If a hacker uses a packet sniffer to intercept a transmission and reads my corporate bank balance, my confidentiality has been compromised.
Spot on.
And the defense there is encryption. Making sure data in transit is wrapped in something like TLS 1.3, so the intercepted packets are just mathematical gibberish to the attacker.
Correct. You're hiding the data. Integrity, however, is the assurance that only authorized users can modify that data.
Okay.
This defends against tampering, usually verified through hashing algorithms.
I often argue that in these high-stakes industries, an integrity breach can be far more insidious and devastating than a confidentiality breach.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's take that rural hospital scenario again. If an attacker breaches confidentiality and reads a patient's medical file, it's a massive compliance failure and a PR disaster.
Yes, terrible.
But if the attacker executes a man-in-the-middle attack, breaches integrity, and actively alters the payload, changing the patient's digital chart from an allergy to penicillin to no known allergies, the consequences are immediately lethal.
The exact same logic applies to finance, too.
How so?
Well, if an attacker breaches confidentiality and views your trade execution, you lose your competitive edge. But if they breach integrity and alter the routing number on a multi-million-dollar wire transfer, the entire financial system's trust collapses.
Wow, yeah.
When a corporate manager is evaluating a UC solution or defining network requirements, they have to interrogate the vendor on both fronts. How does this architecture enforce confidentiality against eavesdropping, and how does it guarantee integrity against malicious tampering?
Such a crucial distinction. Okay, let's pivot to the logistics front. Retail and manufacturing.
Sure. Retail networks are heavily focused on consumer acquisition and retention. The modern consumer heavily researches prices online across multiple competitors before making a purchase.
Right. The market is completely saturated.
Yes. Retailers utilize UC to deploy live, multimodal customer service. They're embedding secure IM, live chat, and video purchasing assistance directly into the e-commerce platform.
So they aren't just communicating, they're embedding the communication channel right into the transaction.
Exactly. To secure the customer's data and complete the sale before they navigate away to a competitor.
Manufacturing networks are fundamentally different though, right? It's all about supply chain automation and minimizing latency.
Right. Modern manufacturing relies on streamlining operations through strategies like just-in-time, or JIT, inventory. The financial model dictates that you do not pay to warehouse thousands of components.
Right. You want the parts arriving exactly when you need them.
Yes. You use network APIs to purchase and route parts so they arrive on the assembly line right on time.
I've analyzed JIT network architectures where a 500 millisecond latency spike on a wide area network link causes cascading financial losses. A JIT system requires absolute automation.
Complete automation.
The sales order entry system is digitally linked to the ERP, which is linked to the supply chain management system, which is pulling data from IoT sensors on the factory floor.
It's all interconnected.
So if the network drops packets and the automated message to the supplier is delayed, the raw materials do not arrive on time. The assembly line halts, and the manufacturer bleeds millions of dollars per hour. The communication requirement here is hyper-reliability and real-time automated messaging.
We also see highly specialized UC applications in travel and education, by the way.
Oh, like what?
The travel industry integrates IoT with UC seamlessly. Hotel networks use 802.11 wireless standards to allow frequent travelers to use RFID-embedded loyalty cards as automated room keys.
Oh, that's convenient.
And while that's happening, the network simultaneously communicates with the room's environmental controls to adjust the temperature to the traveler's saved profile.
That's amazing.
They also use complex routing to allow a traveler's VoIP extension to ring seamlessly on their laptop, regardless of where they are in the world, maintaining the 6IP session across different access points.
That's a great example. And in the education sector, the network is tasked with securely distributing interactive grades, deploying automated response systems for student inquiries, and facilitating real-time remote advisement via secure video conferencing.
Exactly.
But looking at all of this, from retail chat to hotel environmental controls, there is a real psychological friction point. UC acts as the central nervous system of the business, unifying all these channels. But if a retailer utilizes UC to blast a customer with an SMS, an email, a push notification, and a live chat all at once, well, they aren't improving communication, they're creating digital harassment.
Yes. The psychological impact of network communication is a vital management consideration. Too much communication or too little communication triggers anxiety in consumers and business partners alike.
It's a delicate balance.
Very. If a supply chain partner submits a massive order and receives zero automated confirmation, they are anxious about the system's reliability. If they receive 10 redundant notifications, they are just annoyed.
So the technology has to manage the volume intelligently.
Using multiple modes of business communication gives an enterprise the capability to develop a highly blended, custom-fit solution. The core objective of an advanced UC platform is managing presence and availability.
Presence being key there.
Right. It empowers the customer or client to reach the organization on their preferred channel, while simultaneously giving employees the tools to manage their availability status so they aren't overwhelmed by synchronous interruptions.
So the network should facilitate seamless, intelligent routing, not just raw volume.
Exactly.
So we've established how private sector organizations, from agility to enterprise complexity, deploy these architectures to drive profit or optimize care. But when a corporate manager shifts their focus to government contracts, the rules of network gravity completely change. Let's analyze the public sector puzzle and the unique realities of government communications.
The transition from enterprise network design to public sector network design requires a complete recalibration of your priorities.
How so?
Enterprise architectures emphasize a customer service model designed to optimize profit. Government agencies operate under an entirely different paradigm. They are driven strictly by agency mandates, legislative requirements, and perpetually shrinking budgets.
Right. They don't have a profit margin to protect. They have a legal mandate to execute. And a massive hurdle they face, according to the source material, is the lingering demand of heavy, paper-based processes.
Yes. Despite massive federal digitization initiatives, public sector agencies still rely on paper-based processes and legacy archiving significantly more than private industry.
Why is that?
It's largely due to stringent public record laws and legacy compliance regulations that dictate exactly how information must be stored and accessed for decades.
For an IT leader trying to sell a solution to the government, understanding this landscape is critical, especially when we look at the request for proposal, or RFP, process. The procurement model in the public sector is notoriously rigid.
Very rigid, because every single aspect of doing business with the government involves taxpayer money. The entire life cycle of the relationship is subject to strict inspection, public audits, and Freedom of Information Act requests.
Right.
The RFP process is engineered to prevent corruption, favoritism, and the wasting of public funds. Therefore, communications during an RFP are highly formalized and legally constrained.
An enterprise IT director can take a vendor out for a steak dinner, negotiate a price on a new server cluster, and sign a contract the next day. A government procurement officer absolutely cannot.
Doing so would violate their mandate and potentially trigger a federal investigation. During an active RFP, the government legally limits communication to specific designated procurement officers to prevent undocumented information exchanges between competing vendors and agency insiders.
So how does a unified communication system solve this? How do you use network architecture to enforce a legal mandate?
You configure the UC system to hard-code those legal restrictions directly into the network's routing tables and access control lists.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. A properly configured UC platform can automatically deny communication attempts. Emails, SAP calls, instant messages from unauthorized vendor domains.
That's powerful.
If a vendor attempts to bypass the system and contact an unauthorized engineer within the agency, the UC system can intercept that traffic, block it, and seamlessly redirect it to the authorized procurement officer.
So it is technically enforcing the communication silos.
Furthermore, the UC system automatically logs and archives every single interaction. It generates immutable audit trails of every email, voicemail, and IM.
Building the digital paper trail automatically.
Yes, usually writing to worm storage. Write once, read many so the records cannot be altered. The system can even parse these communications to alert designated personnel when mandatory legal actions or project deadlines are approaching.
I always advise managers selling to the government that they have to design their network architectures for auditability first and speed second. Your technology solution has to prioritize strict compliance, exhaustive logging, and granular access control. The technical requirements of the network shift fundamentally based entirely on the client's regulatory environment. You aren't just configuring routers to move packets efficiently. You are configuring them to satisfy federal law.
Which is the perfect segue into the actual execution phase. How does a corporate IT leader transform these abstract business requirements, whether it's public sector auditability, healthcare PHI compliance, or manufacturing latency limits, into concrete, deployable network architectures?
Right. The sources provide a very clear three-step project flow, a translation blueprint. The biggest mistake executives make is throwing raw bandwidth or expensive software at a communication failure and expecting it to magically resolve the underlying workflow friction.
Oh, I see that all the time. The textbook approach demands a disciplined translation process. Step 1, identify a specific business problem. Step 2, formulate a business solution. Step 3, develop or acquire a technology solution that executes that business solution.
It sounds incredibly straightforward, but organizations fail at the mapping stage constantly.
They fail because they don't map the triad of people, processes, and information.
Right.
Step 1 requires mapping those three elements into functional requirements. What must the system actually do? How do the people interact with the data? What are the workflow processes?
Okay, so that's the functional side.
Yes. Step 2 translates those functional requirements into technical requirements. What specific hardware, network protocols, bandwidth capacities, and security architectures are required to make those functional requirements a reality?
And step 3.
Step 3 is acquiring the technology that precisely matches those technical requirements.
The source material explicitly warns that skipping any of these steps, like failing to define a rigorous scope of work, improperly assigning engineering resources, or neglecting to actively monitor the final solution to ensure it meets the initial business goals, will inevitably result in a network that falls short of expected functionality and just burns through capital.
Yeah, and a crucial piece of advice for any project manager: track issues during plan execution and manage them immediately as they arise.
Don't wait.
Do not table network architecture issues for a later phase. A minor configuration error at the routing layer compounds rapidly as you add complex UC applications on top of it.
I want to break down some key textbook terms regarding network requirements into actionable executive insights. Let's look at the classic battle of bandwidth versus endpoints. We see this constant friction where a CTO authorizes a massive, highly expensive upgrade to the corporate network bandwidth.
Right. They buy the biggest pipe.
They buy the largest fiber optic pipe available from their ISP to support a new UC video platform. But post-launch, the executives are furious because their video conferences are still buffering, dropping frames, and experiencing terrible latency. They paid for bandwidth, so what went wrong?
They engineered the hosting infrastructure perfectly, but they completely ignored the endpoints.
The network capacity was entirely bottlenecked by the local hardware.
Exactly. An endpoint is the physical device the user utilizes to access the network: the desktop, the mobile phone, the laptop, the IP phone. A centralized network with massive 10 gigabit bandwidth cannot compensate for poor quality endpoints on the edge. If an executive is trying to join a high-definition UC video conference using a 5-year-old laptop with a degraded 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi card, struggling with packet loss in a crowded hotel lobby, well, the corporate backbone speed is completely irrelevant.
It just can't keep up.
The video will be terrible because the endpoint cannot process or transmit the packets fast enough.
The network is mathematically only as fast as its most congested link, and the endpoint is very often that final, weakest link. The managerial takeaway is that you must rigorously evaluate all user endpoints, auditing their CPU processing power, the wireless capabilities, and their memory before implementing a new UC architecture.
Absolutely.
Upgrading endpoints with hardware limitations must be factored into the initial project scope and budget. Let's move to another critical requirement: high availability. Executives often hear vendors promise 5 nines of availability, 99.999% uptime. But we need to look at this specifically through the lens of disaster recovery.
Right, because when a hurricane hits or a localized power grid collapses, basic network security firewalls don't keep the business running.
No, they don't.
Consider a government agency or a financial institution conducting a business impact analysis. They must determine which core functions are critical for survival post-disaster. Business continuity relies entirely on engineering a highly available network design.
What does that look like in practice?
This means architecting active data centers, implementing redundant BGP routing paths, securing backup power grids, and establishing automated failover mechanisms via SD-WAN.
So if one site goes down, it shifts immediately.
Yes. If a primary data center on the coast is flooded, a highly available network automatically detects the latency and reroutes all enterprise traffic to a secondary data center inland. And it does it seamlessly without the end user ever dropping their Site P session.
Which brings us to the final textbook concept we need to dissect: network access control, or NAC. Why is a robust NAC architecture so critical, specifically when an enterprise is deploying unified communications?
Because UC systems are explicitly designed to promote heavy, seamless, multimodal information exchange across a vast array of devices and geographic locations.
You're intentionally opening the floodgates of data flow to improve collaboration.
Exactly. Therefore, every single device that attempts to touch that network must be ruthlessly interrogated and controlled.
You cannot allow a contractor's infected personal iPad or a guest's unpatched smartphone to simply plug into an Ethernet jack or join the corporate SSID and gain access to the central nervous system.
Precisely. NA systems utilize protocols like 802.1x and Radius servers to ensure that only authorized users operating on compliant, secure devices are granted access.
And they can check the device's health too, right?
Yes. Advanced NAC performs posture assessments. Before it lets your laptop onto the network, it checks if your operating system is patched, if your antivirus is updated, and if your firewall is active.
And if it fails?
If you fail the posture check, you are quarantined to a guest VLAN. NACE technically enforces the confidentiality and integrity requirements we discussed earlier at the very edge of the network.
We have covered an immense amount of architectural ground today. Let's synthesize the primary managerial takeaway from everything we've analyzed regarding business communication challenges.
The foundational lesson for any IT leader is that throwing raw bandwidth or expensive software at a workflow problem will not magically resolve it. True enterprise leadership requires translation.
Translation.
Yes. You must be able to translate specific vertical business challenges, whether that is maintaining HIPAA compliance in healthcare, ensuring the sub-millisecond reliability of JIT manufacturing, or hard-coding an auditable digital paper trail for government RFPs into precise technical network requirements.
You have to balance the massive bandwidth pipes with meticulous endpoint hardware audits while enforcing strict network access controls. If we tie this all the way back to our opening scenario, that terrifying 10:114 a.m. moment where your hospital or trading floor goes completely off the air, the way you prevent that catastrophic strategic vulnerability is by following the rigorous three-step blueprint. Identify the core business problem, formulate the business solution, and then, and only then, acquire the technology that maps directly to your people, your processes, and your information flow.
It is the only methodology that ensures the network serves the strategic goals of the business, rather than the business being constrained by the limitations of the network.
We want to express our deepest appreciation to you, the listener, for joining us on this deep dive. By engaging with this material, you are investing the time to truly understand the strategic architecture of your organization. But the concepts we've covered today are just the foundation.
We have established the why and the what, but we need to go deeper into the how.
Absolutely, because in our next session, Chapter 3, Circuit Switched, Packet Switched, and IP-based communications, we are going to open the hood. We are going to look at the raw mechanics of these networks. You must stay tuned to solve the next piece of the technical puzzle. Understanding exactly how your data physically and logically moves from point A to point B, from legacy copper lines to modern IP routing.
It is where the theoretical architectural design meets the physical wire.
So let me reiterate our early engagement ask. Please like, subscribe, and share this deep dive. Direct your attention to the description below for resource links, diagrams, and technical reading to help you master this material. We also highly encourage you to review our channel for other corporate IT playlists, videos, and modules designed for your continuous professional education.
Definitely check those out.
Specifically, you should check out the Digital Forensics podcast series and the Network and Systems Security podcast series hosted right here on the channel. They dovetail perfectly with the security frameworks we've discussed today.
They provide excellent supplemental deep dives into the exact threat vectors we've analyzed.
As we wrap up this chapter, I want to leave you with a reflective, high-impact question to consider before our next session. As you look at your own organization, are your endpoints bottlenecking your massive bandwidth investments? Align the strategy, optimize the network. Until next time, keep your business connected, your assets visible, and your infrastructure secure.